Hey everybody, it's Gregg Majewski and we're here with another episode of Room for Seconds. Not only do I have an incredible guest, we are sitting in our first live studio taping in our brand new studio in Chicago that we're so excited. Now, if you want to sponsor this great studio and have your name up here, please go ahead and hit me with who would like to be a sponsor. It's not going to come cheap, but right now we are here and it is available. Toast, get your ass moving. So Emily, thank you for taking the time. We are dear friends. We've known each other. I sit on the TRA board or had my arm twisted to sit on the TRA board.
You wanted to, you ran for it.
But you are everywhere and you're probably the most influential state president of the National Restaurant Association out there. You are one of the few out there that I've actually seen go and fight the bigger battles, even though they're not always your battle to fight. And have done incredible things. And obviously Texas is a huge state, has a ton of money and everything else to do the fighting, but you've always taken the forefront of what the battles are and where we need to be. Why don't you give a little bit of a rundown of your history, but more importantly, some of the great things that the TRA has done for our industry?
Yeah, you bet. Great to be here. My room is sponsored by Roll Tide here in Tuscaloosa. So I think
Cats.
Yeah, would you go Cats? No, I mean, there's a Roll Tide, Okay, so I think, first of all, I don't think most people even know what we do. I always say like we're the silent insurance policy that whether you're paying us or not, we're out there doing the heavy lifting, which is why you need to pay and be a member. But our job really is if you're operating at the local, state, or federal level through our partnership with the National Association, you are protected on that regulatory front. That is a message of the TRA is to keep you where you can operate and you can grow your business. And so we look at everything from local health ordinances, permitting, TABC, the Workforce Commission. At the state level, it's everything from protecting the tip credit, looking at different policies like we did one session ago, but now 2 years ago, preempting all economic and labor laws at the state level to ensure that if you're operating a restaurant, you have one set of rules under those two sort of headings. And then 3, we work really closely now with the National Association in the courts. And I think the dual jobs, joint employer, 80/20, I mean, incredible wins. We use the favorability of being in our Fifth Circuit to help create those wins and our local members to help. But that's really where we work locally, but it impacts the entire industry. And so the work we do in Texas is important, but honestly, we have given, I think, a tremendous amount of wins and sort of favorable conditions for brands all across the US. And we're really proud of that.
So I am a proud member of the Texas Restaurant Association, even though I am in Chicago, because I feel that's the right spot for my company to just sort of be based and for what you do. There are there are associations that are definitely not as motivated as you are to take the fight. And you and I have had many, many conversations about why taking the fight on tip wage and educating, and it's not really a fight on tip wage, it's educating the consumer and the politicians on why tip wage is so important and how taking it away hurts and how much money servers make and how this is they're not making $4.95 or $8.95 or in some states now 12.
Right.
But I don't think enough people educate properly on why certain things hurt the restaurant industry.
Yeah, and there's no doubt. I mean, I have incredible colleagues across the US, and we certainly benefit from keeping Texas regulatory friendly. And so we work really hard to keep it that way. And I look at some of my friends on the coast and they're just up against fight after fight after fight, and they do all they can. I think what we learned in the pandemic was you've got to be the one driving the agenda. You've got to be the one coming up with the solutions. And in the tip credit, you're exactly right. Nobody understands it. It's very easy for a lawmaker to be convinced that someone in our state is making $2.13 an hour, when actually the average wage is $20 to $30 on a tipped server wage. And so we have to do a tremendous amount of education. But I also think that the win is when the employees are the ones that say, hey, don't take my tips. Look what I'm making. So we also have to educate employees, because in some cases, their wage is at risk, that tip credit is at risk, and they may not even know. And I'm looking around the country at places where we've won every single tip credit battle, I think, but 1 or maybe 1.5 at this point. That's an unbelievable track record for my colleagues across the country. And really what drives it is when we can keep it off the ballot, because it's hard to explain, and we can make sure these servers go and say, hey, listen, don't touch my tips. So we can't, even in Texas, we are vigilant on this, and it takes a lot of resources because, to your point, if the house is turning over every 2 years, You're constantly trying to educate someone, and you're up against, an alternative opposing group that says that this is the worst thing ever, and people are only getting 213. So that education is key, and you have to do it every single day, every single month, every single year.
Now, I'll agree. 213 is probably too low, and I think federal minimum wage should go up. Um, do I think it should go up to $20 an hour? Absolutely not. Do I think it should raise with inflation? Yeah, I do think minimum wage should be tied to an inflationary raise every year. I think that should be an automatic. Um, but I don't know how to get that message out without sounding like, oh, you're for minimum wage. No, I want a cost of living, but I don't pay minimum wage anywhere. We don't. We
But
pay
that's
so much
exactly
more
right.
to get that dollar in, and minimum wage. And we have this argument all the time with people. Minimum wage was for a starter job. It was to really to
Right.
be your first job wage. That's the only thing that it was ever supposed to be. It was never supposed to be a living wage. It was supposed to be, hey, a high school kid shouldn't make $20 an hour when they've never had a job before. They shouldn't. It's a learning curve. We're mentoring these people until they're 18, 21, and then start going out. Then those wages should start to steamroll based on where you are. But I don't think people get that. And now, in the old days, minimum wage was what was paid, but that hasn't been the case in,
Right.
25,
Well, the
30.
market drives it, right? You're looking at 20 to 28% increase in wages in just the last couple of years in our industry. And that was because the market drove that. And I do think that there's a conversation to be had. I think when you think about a national wage, I think that gets into some challenging conversations because New York City cost of living is very different than Texas, where I'm sitting in Alabama today, right? Mathematically. But I think it's always a conversation we at the association, it's like immigration. We want to be at the table. We want to be having a conversation. Our employees are critical to us, right? It's why you've seen this investment from associations like ours and others in healthcare and mental health coverage and looking at ways for restaurants to give professional development. We can't do our jobs without, I just saw a stat. I don't know if this will surprise you or not, but on average, it's 12.1 employees to run a restaurant. If you look at gas stations, convenience stores, small retail, you're talking about 1 to 3. So we are such a labor heavy, which is probably another whole conversation we can have, that we've got to figure that piece out. But we also have to make sure that we take care of our people because we know there's a direct correlation between guest satisfaction and employee satisfaction. We know that hands down. And so I think wage is one part of the conversation, but it's also how are we treating these people and how are we making sure they see that they can go from dishwasher to owner? Name another industry that can happen. Very few left in America other than ours.
100% agree. And 12.1, actually, I thought it'd be higher.
Yeah, 12.1. I mean, you think about that, even if you were to insert technology, and let's say you had one or two redundant jobs that nobody really wanted to do anyway, right? And you replace that maybe with a kiosk. You're still talking about 10 people, right, on average. And so to still deliver that experience, it makes us very labor intensive. And why, I'm sure margins are hurting right now because of cost of goods and labor. They're up so much.
Margins are hurting also because companies took too much price. And what we're horrible at in this industry is we take price, but when price drops, we don't drop it and we don't
I'm afraid
fluctuate. We
so.
take the price and we sort of leave it at that and say, oh, well, prices went down. I'm going to make more money. I'm going to make up for everything. And that's why right now so many restaurants are in this trouble because they haven't
Right.
adjusted back down.
Or they
And the
have
consumers
value,
know it.
right? Right. And the consumer is making a choice, right? I would say the restaurant isn't moving to value. We keep seeing these articles about restaurants are choosing to promote value. No. The consumer said, you better start to give me value, and restaurants are responding. And I think that's where the consumer now is saying, listen, my pocketbook is squeezed. It's tight. You've gotten to a level where it's not sustainable. And we've seen that in QSR, right? That fall off in the summer of people saying, uncle, I'm not trading down. I'm going to trade out. And value is critical, but not because we want to do it. The consumer is now, it needs to be there because those funds are worth more in their pocket than they were before.
No, I mean, interest rates are high. I mean, yes, we took a decrease this week, which was great, but it's going to be months before anyone
Bingo.
feels that.
Absolutely months, if not a year. I mean, it could be a year. It's going to take 2, 3, 4.
Right.
I think until we start to see the credit card interest start to come down, the consumer starting to feel like we're in the good. Jobs reports got a little cleaner for us to feel better. In the meantime, I think we're in this little kind of a strange place right now. We know the independents are reaching out like crazy saying, what is happening to traffic? What can we do? What can we do? What can we do? And if you're in a single unit sitting in a small area in Texas, that's a tough road right now.
I'm Gregg Majewski, and I've been a multi-unit operator for 26 years. I know how great it feels owning the right franchise brand, but choosing the right franchisor feels even better. At Craveworthy Brands, our hospitality-driven culture sets us apart because we're invested in your success at every single stage of your journey. We're operators alongside you, paving the way forward to give you a head start on greatness. Start your franchise journey at craveworthybrands.com. Yeah, blue-collared America is hurting and hurting bad.
For
And I
sure.
mean, I have restaurants in the blue-collar markets. Those are my worst. Those are the ones that are down the
Really? So you
most.
can see it.
And the higher end or middle America and up are traded down to us. So I'm seeing increases. But I
Yes.
also introduced a value prop before everyone else, and you and I have talked about this, is that I lowered my prices almost 2 years ago and created a new segment, in all my
Smart.
menus, not something cheaper. I just added a new menu item that I could drop my price to. Though, over the
Yes.
last 7 or 8 months, the amount of traffic that has moved to that lower price value prop has been, 30 or 40% of my customer base, which means they're hurting,
Wow. They're
which
hurting, but
is
guess what? They're still in your restaurant because you gave them an
correct.
option. They're not
And I mean,
trading out. You're holding on to that traffic.
and just like all the other restaurant people, I don't want to take price down. My prices
That's
that I
right.
raised up, but I found a way to reduce my price and my ticket average so consumers have a choice. But most of
Smart.
us don't think that far down the line. Most restaurant people aren't worried about 2 years from now or 6 months from now. We're living day by day, and we're dependent on people like you to keep us
Exactly.
informed.
That is, I would say I say to people, if the one thing you get from us is our weekly newsletter, which literally is the federal, state, local update, everything from you are now required to put an allergy poster September 1 in your restaurant to here's benchmarking on wages to here's the credit card swipe fee fight we're in, like whatever that is, like your ability, we don't want you all involved in the regulatory and legislative process on a day-to-day basis. It's complicated. It's hard to understand. That's our job. But if you're not informed, you could end up going off a steep cliff with not even knowing it. And then you want to try to back out of that and it's too late. So we say, I wish I could just go around the country because my colleagues, I think, feel the same, which we are kind of this unknown resource that's sitting there that has the visibility from food truck to institutional feeding all the way up to the largest chain restaurants. And those regulatory and legislative issues matter to you being able to be successful. And so just being in tune by checking in or reading, it is critical for you to be successful. It's what we do all day long. That's our job.
Nonstop. And people don't take advantage of it, and there's other things that you all provide, the data points, and you
Oh my
provide
goodness.
sales data and all this other information is at your fingertips, or the partnerships. I mean, I don't take
Yes.
advantage of all the partnerships and the
Right.
discounts because I don't have time to look at them all, but there's so much that the Restaurant Association provides restaurants to help lower their costs if they got involved and were a member and paying attention to it.
Absolutely. And it's so easy. And I just think that right now, I mean, being informed is such a big part of running your business, right? And I think also being in a network. So I just came out of the board meeting, 100, board members from across every corner and every segment of the industry, and watching
Minus
those
me, because I didn't make it.
friendships. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and put you on the unexcused list.
It
You weren't
was
the only one.
excused.
Thanks, FS Tech. But I think what's interesting to me is watching the quick serve people with the fast casual, with the bakery, with the catering people. We had Sean Kennedy from National come and give people a highlight of the tax fights that are going to happen next year. I mean, these are critical. Most of the tax benefits you have today are expiring. So if you're not engaged in that, if you don't listen when we call or we send you a note, Greg, and say, hey, hit this link and tell both your senators this matters, then we don't have enough voices to make sure we get what we need to get done. And you talk about removing some of these benefits like depreciation or the small business tax cuts, that would drive your business over a cliff more than figuring out your next marketing campaign. That's how important it is.
So, bringing up taxes, both candidates for president have jumped on the no tax for tips. So,
We are not
as a
great
restaurant owner, I am not in favor of it because I don't know how I can go and tell my managers that there's all these people are not going to pay tips on this item, and you're going to go on ahead and make even less or closer the gap between the positions. It scares the daylights out of me. It's a great soundbite, but it also shows how politicians will say about anything to get elected these days.
Yeah,
And you guys take a lot of time in going through each individual candidate on both the red and the blue side. And
definitely.
magically, everyone thinks Texas is all red. You
No,
all have nominated on both sides. And you do that because
correct.
of who is focused on the betterment of the actual policies that they want to play in
That's
and not
exactly
just the
right.
word of mouth. So
That's
how
right.
important it is for people to actually do real research on the candidates that are running for office every day.
It is the most important thing you can do. And I would say if you're just going in and pulling one lever, right, which in Texas you can no longer do, right? We don't have full party voting. Um, I would say one thing, no matter where you are, you need to actually have your personal vote, but you also, if you're a business owner, you need to be putting the lens of your business. And I think the most important thing you can do is every association will endorse candidates or their PAC will put money behind a candidate. And so we will pull out a list as we get closer to the November election, all the candidates that we support that are pro-business. And you're exactly right. It's Republican and Democrat. Those are folks that we stand behind and say we want them in office because we know they'll do a good job for us. We never pick a presidential candidate, right? That's something that individuals have to do. But I tell people to really research when you think about like the no taxes on tips. Those both candidates launched that in the 2.1 million service worker state of Nevada on two different times. And then we scramble because we then get the call, for example, from Senator Cruz, who says, I want to create a bill. And they work with the National Association hand in hand. Kelsey weighs in on my team. And we're able to bring all those things to light. What about the employer? What about FICA? Right? What does it mean to have a pure bill? And this may be something that, no matter which candidate gets in, they're probably going to come in the spring and take something and want Congress to take up action. So the idea has to go through a long process, Greg, to get to any sense of reality. And what we try to do is tell our business owners, we're doing all that work behind the scenes for you, and we'll come back and say, hey, this is what the proposal looks like, and then we'll recommend a direction. But I think what you're going to see in this next 2 months is a lot of this type of stuff, right? I promise to do this, I promise to do that. And at the end of the day, you've got to be aware of what can the president do, what does Congress have to do, and who is going to support your business, and not just take at face value the R or the D next to their name, but really understand their policy position. And your restaurant association should do a really good job of giving you that information directly.
Yeah, the one candidate brought up eliminating taxes in general and just going to tariffs. And
Yeah,
instantly you're like, well, the accounting world is going to fight this. IRS is going to fight this. The amount of jobs that are created by all the things the government has done, it's not as simple as just making a promise. Now, believe me, I would absolutely love the fact if all my taxes went away, it would make life a hell of a lot easier.
well,
But
for
I
everybody,
don't
right? I
know,
mean,
right.
yeah, that's not
I
going to
don't know if
happen.
I don't understand why people just throw out those crazy type of ideas to drum up vote. It means they do it because no one does their research on what it actually
Right. It's a
takes.
it's a quick soundbite in the world we live in today. It's a quick TikTok that I'm going to make more. But we think about things like creating a bigger disparity between the back of the house and the front of the house. What will it do to other industries? If I'm a childcare worker and I'm paying taxes and we have a massive deficit in early learning and childcare, and my passion for this is I think we have to fix this for the industry. You're creating so much disparity. Like, we want to take care of our employees, but we also don't want our employees to be victim of a backlash or not saving for their future. So we're at the very start of this conversation. And the great news is the National Restaurant Association, as always, is at the table. We've partnered with Senator Cruz as our first attempt, and we'll learn a lot more over the next couple of months.
So one of the other areas you're extremely passionate about, as you brought up, is education and mentorship.
Yes.
And it's a lot of people don't know that about you, that
Yeah.
that's really your true passion.
Yes.
Like, I've heard you talk about policy, I've heard you talk about everything else, but when you talk about how to mentor someone, how to give guidance, and how to bring them up and see them advance, that's sort of like your joy.
It is.
What's needed in our industry to help get the next generation of leaders ready? And how can we help?
Yeah, I would say it starts with, and I'm going to give you this quick story, but we have High School Barbecue High. It's on Magnolia, HBO Max. It's getting a lot of attention. It's a new series. And one of their stars, I had breakfast last week. I met her mom and she said, listen, she just graduated. She's unsure of her direction. Would you meet with her? So I was sliding through Dallas really quick to the board meeting, and I said, let's have coffee. We had a great breakfast. She looked right at me and she said, listen, everyone keeps telling me I should do hospitality. I mean, Greg, she just shines. She is the person you'd want. She could build a beautiful global career with us. She said, but when I research, it shows sort of front desk clerk and cook. And I can't, like, the wages are low and I don't think I'm going to do that. So I was thinking more business, what do you think? And I went, okay, time out. I built a global career, right? From Pizza Hut to Marriott to all over the world, opening schools for hospitality. I said, I'm sorry that you found nothing on Google that led you to want to be in our industry. But I walked away thinking to myself, holy cow, this is what we're up against, right? We're up against parents who don't want their children in our industry because they're misinformed and they don't see the global, they don't see the ownership, they don't see people like you that started with stores and now look, you're building this mega company. And so that number one is we've got to get people like you and our brands integrated with our Pro Start schools across the country. There are 250,000 kids putting their hand up every day, learning our trade, and most have no interaction with the brand directly. To me, that's number one. You get them right out of high school, off they go into your businesses. I think number two, our colleges and university, same thing. Where's the link? Where is the link and the development? And I think three, it's things like Gleam and Lead and WFF. And what are we doing for the underserved populations in our industry? And what are we doing to advance women specifically into CEO roles that are not loser jobs, right? We all can sit back and watch when some of these jobs open. You're like, oh my God, a female or got this job, right? And it's like, that brand is dead. Like, why don't we really make meaningful growth? And childcare comes into this. We're losing too many women at that middle tier level of management because they're having to make a choice. Do I go back to work and pay $2,000 to put my child in childcare? Or I can't afford that because I'm just in the middle management. Guess what? I'm going to go find and do something else. I mean, we're at a crossroads, and the last report that just came out from McKinsey shows we're still losing too many women. So I think there's the education on the front end that the businesses have to own, and we all have to make a commitment. And then it's that middle term, and how do we get those underserved people to stay? And we've got to support them with better tools and resources. They cannot work for us if they have nowhere to put their kids. It's that simple.
I wholeheartedly agree with all of it.
I'm just a little passionate about this. Sorry.
Right. And I get as involved as I possibly can, but my older son is a student in DePaul and, has started, and he's in a restaurant management class. And they're sitting there talking about the restaurant industry and going through it. And yet the guy is quoting wrong facts to my son in the room and used Jimmy John's as an example. And so here's my son.
You might know a little bit about that.
He put his head down because he's like, he doesn't want any correlation to me. And he's like, Dad, I wanted to correct him about the story and how it went and the struggles and all that. But he, makes it sound like it's a once in a lifetime opportunity and never can happen again. And
Not
I'm like,
true.
I don't understand why people would do that. And it is a once in a lifetime opportunity, but it's a once in a lifetime over and over again. The restaurant industry is a remarkable business if you're willing to gamble. If you want to be an owner,
even calculated gamble, right? A calculated gamble. It's not like you're putting money on black and hoping. I mean, you're and the skills you learn, right? We're so gritty, you and I. Like, I don't know, we're both in different places right now. We see each other through the plane, essentially, right? But we're just willing to put the work in. But a lot of that you learn in the industry, which means you can go do anything. I mean, how many kids don't have that kind of grittiness about them?
Well, it's the first job.
Mm-hmm.
It's what made this industry so great. The restaurant industry was built on people's first job. And I tell people all the time, I take so much pride in when someone walks through my door and it's their first job to make sure that we give them this tools so their next job, they can be even better and so on down the line. I don't want a high school kid to end up working for me. That's never my goal. I don't want them to be a line cook for the rest of their lives. If they do decide to work for me, I want them to become a manager and an RD and eventually a VP and go to school and then become a franchisee, in my case or whatever. But they don't get that story, and
they
so
don't.
many parents
and I think
are so
get
quick
yes,
to turn
I
it
know
off.
my parents, right?
I got friends that do the same thing I do and won't let the kids in the restaurant industry. But yet we all do really, really good because of this industry. But it's hard.
Right.
And they don't want the kids to go through the stuff that they went through.
Right.
And it is a hard industry, but it's also a rewarding industry.
And it's that's one that really plays to people's strength, right? For me, I'm very service oriented. Like, I always wanted to help and serve others personally, professionally. And so I feel like in this industry, this job for sure, we fight for you all every day. It's a passion, but also the art of service, the art of creating a place for people to come and break bread, no matter their backgrounds, their wealth, everything is neutralized when you're around a table with food. And So we're so important culturally, but I think we've got to get to the younger people. And the only way I can imagine is starting with these 250,000 students that are already putting their hand up to learn about our industry, connect them to people like you, connect them to your managers, connect them to the brands, right? That's where they say, oh, I'm in. I didn't know that. Like I landed in Galveston and right on the little runway last week were all these helicopters, but they were like gigantic. And I'm just a curious person. I was like, where are they going to the oil places? Like, what is this? And they were flying because all the food and beverage crews, I don't know why I didn't ever assume they ate out there. Like, I know that sounds crazy, but it finally hit me. Oh my gosh, they have restaurants and cafeterias on these platforms. And they have managers and assistant managers that go out there and live on the water. Now, maybe not glamorous, but it just reminds you of from sailing on the Ritz-Carlton cruise ship as a sommelier to opening a restaurant on the, in Beijing. Like, it's not just in your backyard. Like I was benefiting from being global, but I think that's the story is you got to start somewhere, but you can go anywhere. And that just, we've not been able to do that as an industry. For some reason, we just continue to throw money at it. And I think it's the people like you and others that they need to meet. It's not the marketing campaign. It's the people, kind of the heartbeats I call it, that make up the industry. That's who the young people need to meet.
I agree. I mean, because every time I go in and I talk to a group, I get somebody that wants to join and work with
Every
me,
time. Every
you know?
time. Yep.
And I don't think there's enough compassion in this industry
I agree with
to
that.
show what's hard and not hard and that what you can be. And again, I mean, we joke all the time, but I want to make millionaires. That's what I live by.
Yes.
And, that's people look at me and say, just a Coney slaying. I go, no, but that's really why I do it. I want the people that work for me to have a change of life. And
Absolutely.
that's the
The
focus
best
that
you
should
can
be on.
do.
And that's how you should be telling people this. So you brought up ProStart, but you didn't really tell us what that was.
Sorry.
So
Yes.
you
Yes.
got a little fast. So why don't you educate everybody? Because it's an absolutely wonderful program.
It is. It is through our partnership. So the National Restaurant Association Education Foundation has a curriculum, actually ProStart to curriculum. So it's 2 years. And going back, way back about 18 years ago, I was working in education and helped negotiate the first deal for ProStart and ServSafe with another company. So I feel like I have this very long history with it. But imagine if you go into AP and you take AP US history, AP chemistry, you can actually take a 2-year curriculum called ProStart, where you are hands-on learning about culinary arts, restaurant management. Sorry, that's my next. Restaurant management, culinary arts. And what's unique about it is that you're actually hands-on in kitchens all across the US. And so you can sit for a certification at the end, or you can also earn, I should say, and you earn your ServSafe certification and your ServSafe manager, and you do internship hours. So you're talking about students that are hands-on every single day. A lot of the best teachers take them out into the community. They do events. We had our kids cooking at the NFL championships. And so that program, just our state alone, is 25,000 kids across 252 school districts, about 260 school districts. And so they're in uniforms, they get culinary arts jackets, and they come and compete once a year in Waco, Texas. We have about 600. The program we have to keep investing in. We've got to keep putting world-class kitchens in, and we've got to keep having brands connect with these kids. It's so important.
Episode. Follow us on all the major social media networks. And again, take what Emily said, mentor the people in this industry, get the next generation to actually step up because we're going to need them. And this is an incredible industry. Emily, thank you so much for your time.
And thank you. Thanks for all you do, Greg.
Thank you. All right, let me hit stop. Hey viewers, thanks again for supporting Room for Seconds. If you found this episode inspiring, interesting, or any bit informative, please hit that little subscribe button down at the bottom so you never miss an episode. In my 26 years in this amazing industry, I've been blessed with incredible mentorship. This show is my way of giving back. Follow me on LinkedIn, search Gregg Majewski, on Twitter, @Gregg_Majewski. If you still have room for more, visit our website at media.craveworthybrands.com. You'll find more videos, shows, notes, blogs, resources, and an easy way to get in touch with the Craveworthy Brands team. I'm your host, Gregg Majewski. Thanks again for tuning in to Room for Seconds.